Salam Sejahtera, Datuk Sri. We are very pleased to have your good self with us today. But I guess my first question to you would be, how would the Foreign Ministry use a concept like the global movement of moderates to actually put into practical diplomatic applications?
Oh, thank you very much for having me here today. Now, from the very first day that the Prime Minister announced the idea of the 65th United Nations General Assembly in 2010, the Ministry has been active in promoting the idea of the international forums by reflecting it in our statement, speeches, and also the outcome documents. For example, the GMM has been reflected in the communique of the Commonwealth's Head of Government, which is was held in Perth in 2011. And likewise, the ASEAN leaders had signed the Bali Declarations on the ASEAN Global Community of Nations, or known as Bali Concord 3, as part of the ASEAN positive contribution to the global peace and security. Now, in terms of practical application at the level of diplomacy, Malaysia's foreign policy, as I explained in my luncheon's talk day before yesterday, has always been a policy of moderation.
Right.
Yes. And Malaysia's diplomats have also always been known as honest brokers on the international arena, simply because we advocate a win-win situations in trying to find solutions to problems. And even it means making proposals between the two extremes. Yeah, so this is why we're very, very proud in the international arena that Malaysia has been recognized as such as that. Yeah.
Well, what do you think makes it different from other initiatives such as the Project of Common World and Alliance of Civilization? How does the GMM differ?
Well, GMM has never meant to rival other initiatives or programs that has been introduced earlier. And if you listen carefully to what the Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri Malaysia or Prime Minister of Malaysia stated in his opening address of this conference, he stressed that the fact that the GMM is a complement to other initiatives, and because all of them have the same goal, that is to in pursuing of peace and justice. Now, but however, GMM is not just about interfaith or about inter-civilization dialogue. It is, and also it is not focusing mainly on religion.
Yes.
And moderation is something that we can apply, okay, in all areas, such as politics, socio-economy, and especially in foreign policy. It is also a common value in all civilizations, religions, beliefs, and philosophies, which is made easier to be acceptable by and embraced by all. Now, basically, the ministry seeks to promote the idea of GMM at every possibility, be it bilaterally, multilaterally, or such as the ASEAN, CHOGM, United Nations, or Icgmm, and so on. And the aim is to obtain the support and acceptance of the idea, and which could then be translated into actions such as in conflict resolution, territorial dispute, and as well as combating extremism and terrorism.
Right. Now, one of the areas where moderation would come in actually very handy is the Middle East. What is the Malaysian government's official policy pertaining that conflict? And do you think there is actually a middle ground that can be used to resolve this decades-long conflict?
Well, we are, in fact, very, very sad looking at what's happening in the Middle East. And, of course, as you said, for more than half a century, the world community has been searching in vain for a peaceful solution in the Middle East. And since 1948, there have been wars and destructions, forcing millions of people Palestinian people into exile. And to this very day, the United Nations is still grappling with the task of bringing a closure to this prolonged sufferings of the Palestinian people. Now, Malaysia has always been very, very vocal on the issue of Palestinian, and especially in the international fora. And the outlines of the resolution to the Palestinian questions are clear for all to see. Now, it is contained in the Arab Peace Initiative, which has, a couple of principles, among them that there must be a Palestinian state based on UN borders established before the 1967. That's a six-day war. And secondly, full normalization of relation with Israel in exchange for the withdrawal of forces in all occupied territories, then also including the Golan Heights. And thirdly, an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. And of course, we also want to see a just solution for all the Palestinian refugees. Now, anyone who's seen or who has read these principles, and these are moderates, nothing extreme about it. But the problem is actually time and again, resolution after resolution that has been introduced in the United Nations, Israeli government has time and again demonstrated extreme behavior. And for that matter, what we have always been advocating, that we should find a solution through negotiations, through discussions, and this has eluded somewhat and somehow in the Middle East. And this is why we're still hoping. Malaysia is still trying to find a way, and we believe that through moderations we should be able to find a solution to this conflict.
And then we have newer conflicts, or fresher conflicts, if you would call it, such as the upheaval in Bahrain and Syria that we've just seen, as early as the end of last year. Again, is it possible that something that GAM could provide a new way forward for these conflicts?
Well, in Bahrain, in Syria, this is where I think, again, moderation could be, the way forward. It may not necessarily be automatically that we'll be able to solve the problem. But all problems or conflicts that happen in Bahrain and Syria, that it is our view that moderation as espoused by the GMM is the best course of action and the best way forward. And the main objective is to provide a platform for the voices of moderation to counter the increasing sentiments of extremism in all forms. Now, GMM could contribute towards that. And by providing a platform for the silent majorities in both Bahrain and Syria to deal with these differences. Now, in this regard, Malaysia welcomes the serious acceptance of the Arab League Observers team and hope that it would assist the country in finding a peaceful solution. It is our firm belief that the Syrian government and the opposition should work together, sit down, discuss, and to try to find a workable solution and to resolve this problem. Now, what our worry is what has happened to Libya. Now, Malaysia, we do not support this military intervention to end the conflict in either both Syria or Bahrain, but especially Syria. And we believe that the political solution is the only way of finding a solution to the problem. Now, with regard to Bahrain, Malaysia welcomes the Bahrain Independent Commission of Inquiry, and Malaysia believes that the implementations of this commission recommendation and will be implemented by the government and for a better and stronger and prosperous Bahrain. Now, in this regard, Malaysia can maybe we could share our experience on the concept of one Malaysia, of course, which has been introduced by our Prime Minister. Now, this concept of one Malaysia is an example of a justly balanced moderation aimed at strengthening the population, the people, and also instilling the sense of belonging to all Malaysians, regardless of race, creed, or religions. And it is also aimed at instilling values in all Malaysians towards achieving what is known as a Vision 2020. Now, in short, Malaysia's diversity in how it is dealt with problems that provides unique advantage and strengths that would land credibly in promoting moderations
Right.
and also the peaceful coexistence. And Malaysia would like to share these experiences. It may be different to what they are experiencing now, but nevertheless, we can exchange views and outline our experiences that maybe in some forms or some parts that can be applied.
And I think that is, will be an eventuality one day, because as we've seen in both conflicts in Bahrain and Syria, the one power that sort of took a back seat to this with military intervention is the United States. I mean, with the problems that have plagued the country recently, its economic downturn and the presidential elections coming up, do you still think that it can tilt the balance of power within the country to a liberal and democratic, or even a global village?
Well, we always like to use the terms of superpowers, global powers, in global village. I think it is this conference, in fact, the global movements are moderates. And at this juncture, at this moment of time, we're still talking about these superpowers. Now, there are countries, especially small countries, that may not like the label of superpowers or global powers. And sometimes when they do not have the avenue to express their feelings, and even though no matter how small a country is, but they want to be heard.
Right.
And sometimes when that avenue is not available to them, and therefore they resort to some extreme actions. But I'm not against any labeling, but we must be humble, so that when we are superpowers, we must lead by example. We must show the good deeds, and for the smaller countries to respect and to follow us. Now, but back to your question with regard to the role of the United States in this global village. The fact remains that U.S., whether we like it or not, still yields significant influence in foreign policy issues. But the U.S. herself realizes that they must have the international consensus and support in order to move forward. And therefore, we can see under Obama, see the change that has taken place. And now they are more engaging in this Asia-Pacific region.
Right.
And even Hillary Clinton reiterated that the commitment in November, which she said in November 2011, citing that the 21st century is actually the America's Pacific century, and holding a period of unprecedented approach and outreach and partnership towards the countries in this region. So the U.S. recognized that the developments in Asia will have impact in its own economy or even security. And has stated that one of the most important tasks of American statecraft is to enhance diplomatic, economic, and strategic investments in this part of the world. And this includes strengthening the existing alliances as well as expanding cooperation with emerging partners and powers in Asia, including China and India. So the focus on the Asia-Pacific takes on more prominence as the U.S. withdraws from Afghanistan and Iraq. And President Obama has unveiled U.S. defense priorities recently, highlighting the rebalancing of military strategy towards Asia-Pacific, and also preceded by the President's announcements on deepening U.S. military presence in this region, and through the deployment of the U.S. Marine troops to Northern Australia during his visit to Australia last year, and which enable for America to respond quickly to humanitarian or any security aspects for the matter. Now, the other notion that we have, or people have, is that the supposed conflict of interest between U.S. and China. And I think this is often exaggerated by some parties. Now, in truth, we acknowledge, as acknowledged by both countries, the fate and progress of both China and U.S. are interdependent. And Malaysia believes that the Asia-Pacific region would benefit from a strong and healthy relations between the two countries.
Right.
Now, because Malaysia being a trading nation, and we trade both with China and US, we could only benefit if the two countries strengthen their ties, and this is healthy for the region. Now, like many others in ASEAN, Malaysia also welcomed the repeated announcement by both China and the US that their relationship in our region, which is very, very important, is one of cooperation,
right,
but not competition. Now, this has pleases all in ASEAN, because of course we are very, very worried. Now, this again is another example of moderation in action. So it is more of cooperation. So, and this is why ASEAN stresses the importance of as I said earlier, the strengthening of the relationship between the two superpowers, and of course ASEAN will benefit. Now, this is something that we're looking forward to. And of course, now currently a lot being said about what's happening in South China Sea and what are American interests towards South China Sea. And we and ASEAN, now even among ourselves, we have some overlapping claims. Yeah? For example, we have overlapping claims with Vietnam. We also have with Philippines and Indonesia. And therefore, what we have agreed in ASEAN is that we must solve the problem among ourselves first. Then we will discuss with China. Because the fact of the matter is, if we were to discuss bilaterally with China, we may reach an agreement, but may not necessarily solve our problem with other ASEAN nations.
Neighbors,
So this is why we feel that the implementations of the declarations of conduct in South China Sea is very important. Now ASEAN and China are working towards the elements of Code of Conduct in South China Sea. And well, we know that America is very much worried in the sense that this is one of the busiest shipping lane, and the freedom of navigation, freedom of passage is very, very important. But nevertheless, I think we should solve the problem ourselves, and this is important. And the way to solve it again is through negotiations and dialogues, and of course through moderation.
Right. You know, throughout history there has been proof of moderation taking place, you know, year after year, but still we see so much conflict. There's almost as if there is a cycle of mistrust in the world. Maybe not so much in Southeast Asia, but we see it in the news, we see it in the papers. Do you think moderation is still a viable vehicle without it being seen as a sense of appeasement?
Well, there's always room for moderation, especially with, as you said, with the increasing trend of extremism in imminent conflicts, and they're all throughout the world. Now, what we should do is trying to find a middle path between two extremes. And we are finding a solution to which we can move forward the process. And this is not appeasement. And this is finding a compromise in conflict. So one thing is very, very clear. It does not mean moderations that we are silent, especially from criticizing injustices or violence and transgressions in the international fora. Now, moderation also does not mean that we do not have a strong opinion or have a passion towards certain cause.
Right.
Yeah, on the contrary, one of the main objectives of GMM, as I said earlier, is to provide a platform for the silent majority to counter the voices of extremism. So we should never be cowed in silence from facing injustices or transgressions or aggressions of this nature. So this is why we firmly believe, through our own experiences, that moderations, as I said, also that it may not necessarily guarantee that it will produce the result that we so desire.
Right.
But we still think that there's a room for moderations, and therefore for dialogues, for discussions, for negotiations to take place.
As people say, if you don't try, you'll never know.
You will never know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My last question to you,
Yeah.
Dato' Sri, what is your hope for the future of the global movement of moderates, considering it has been mooted by, our very own Prime Minister here in Malaysia?
I think we're very optimistic about the whole thing, because this is an idea, this is an initiative that comes from the Prime Minister of Malaysia, which, as I said, moderation is a value that could easily be accepted by all parties. Now, and when people are divided and susceptible to the allure of extremism, now moderation is needed to pull back the people from the brink.
Right.
Okay. Now, this is where common sense, this is where relationship, this is where statesmanship plays a very important role. Now, although Malaysia is not really big in terms of size, or we are not really that strong, nor are we too weak, but we have a role, be it as small nations or big nations or superpowers, that each and every country in this world has a role and responsibility to play. So sometimes wars or extremisms or acts of terrorism does not occur just in big countries, but sometimes it also happens in a very small country, or very poor countries or underdeveloped countries. And this is therefore that I believe, and this is Malaysia's belief, and also which the Prime Minister advocates, that moderation is the way. Moderation is the way, so that the voices of the majority could be heard. And what better than finding a solution to problems through negotiations instead of going through war.
Thank you very much, Dato' Sri.